Hi, this is Bob Gleason-Moore, and this is a short video to explain in more detail how to do chasing arrows on the side of a basket using a 3-weaver color pattern. So as we chase arrows on the side using a 3-weaver color pattern, if I have the right number of spokes, the color should go vertical. For this basket, the spokes have to be evenly divisible by 3. So I have 33 spokes. 33 divided by 3 is even. So that makes a vertical color pattern with 3 weavers. And on one side of my basket, I've marked my number 1 spoke here with green, and I start my weavers here, and I've got red, yellow, and blue. Then when I count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. On the other side of the basket, I mark that spoke. And there I have 3 separate weavers, red, yellow, blue, ready to go there. So I have some on one side of the basket, 3 on the other side of the basket. 3 of the same color weavers opposite each other on each side of the basket. Now the first thing I'm going to do on this side, and this is for right-handed weavers, is I'm going to go over 2 under 1 spokes. So this is an over 2 under 1 pattern. Over 2 under 1. Oops. Yeah. Over 2 under 1. Over 2, under 1, and I'm going over the other weavers and in front of 2 spokes and behind. So I'm going to do that all halfway around and then stop here, only halfway. I'm going to do over 2, under 1, halfway around. Now I come halfway around and I stop just before the marker. Stop. Then I put these aside, put those weavers aside, and I pick up the other weavers. These weavers that start where that spoke is, I'm going to go under. So it's over 2 spokes, but each weaver goes under the other 2 and then over the spoke. And that's the other half of the arrow. So the first weaver, the red one, went under the gold, under the blue, in front of those 2 spokes and behind the 3rd spoke. Then I'm going to pick up the yellow weaver. And the yellow weaver will go under those 2 other weavers, in front of the spokes, 2 spokes, and behind the 3rd spoke. Like that. Then I'm going to take the next weaver, the blue, and go under these weavers, in front of 2 spokes and behind the next spoke. And I'm going to do that halfway around the basket. And my technique is I reach under with my hand, and I pick up the weaver and I go under those other weavers and then go out. Another way to do it is holding 2 of the weavers up and then picking the other weaver underneath like that and going down. However you want to do it, each weaver has to go under the other 2 weavers and then in front of 2 spokes and behind the 3rd. But you have to take each weaver and go under the other 2 weavers for this half of the basket's weaving. And think of it as each set of weavers is half of the arrow. This half of the arrow is the under arrow. The other 3 weavers are the over arrow, the over half of the arrow. So once I get all the way around here, I'm almost to this spot where I've got the first spoke marked. So I'm going to go to that point, then I'm going to switch back around to the other side. Excuse me, I'm just going to untangle my weavers here. My weavers get wrapped up and twisted. And if you don't want to have twisted weavers, you can make them shorter. So back around to the first half. Now I'm back to my over arrow, and I'm going to go over two and go past that first mark and keep going up. Each time I pick these up, I'm going to weave halfway around and then stop and pick up the other weavers and weave halfway around. And just keep doing that, halfway around, and what you're going to see is you'll start to see the arrow pattern emerge. And I'm going to do this halfway around. And I'm picking up each weaver, going over the other two weavers, in front of two spokes, and behind that third spoke. So now you can see the arrow pattern starting to emerge. I'm going to do this all the way around, halfway around the basket. And I'm going to be very careful to put these aside. And I have to stop these. I have to stop these that I was just weaving right before I get to the other three, because I don't want to confuse them. So I'll set those aside and then pick up these weavers, and these weavers go under. So I'm going to start back to the other half of my arrow, the under half, and go under and under and under, and just keep working my way around. And bit by bit, I'll see that arrow. Now, I used these markers at the beginning, but after I get going, I don't need those anymore, but I'm going to leave them to remind me that at the end of each of these rows, once I get further up, I want to end them at this starting marker, because that will have completed arrows all the way up. Just untangling my weavers, excuse me. So this is still under. 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 I got them messed up there. I did something wrong. There we go. Got to be very careful. You go in front of two spokes and behind one. There we go. Now we can see that arrow pattern starting to emerge. And I keep taking my weaver and going under the other two weavers. Each weaver goes under the other two weavers for this section, for this half of the basket. Just untangling my weavers is so long. I probably should have selected shorter weavers. And this time I'm going to go a little bit past the marker before I drop them off. So I'm going just past that marker, then I'm going to leave those weavers down, go to the other side of this basket, and go over. This time it goes over. Always remember, and you can look at the way your pattern's going, this one goes over, over, and you always want these three to always do over, over, over. I'm going over, over, over. So you can see that arrow pattern, and you can see by the gold, the color's going up. These are vertical bands that are arrows. And once I get all the way around to the other marker, I will stop weaving just before the marker, just before these three. I'll stop just before so I don't confuse them. So I'll stop right there, set these aside, and then pick these up and start weaving with these. So I'll push these out of my way, and you want to make sure that you do not lose track of which weavers are on which side. So I'm going to set those aside there, pick these up, and this is my under pattern. So I'm going to continue on weaving under, under, and you just keep going back and forth from one side of the basket to the other, and every time you get around halfway, just past the marker, leave one set of three weavers and pick up the other set, and just remember which is weaving over, 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 under, under, under. When you're finished weaving up as far as you want to go, this was the under row. When I come all the way around to the beginning, I want to make sure I stop above where I started. So if you look closely, this one under, 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 that's where I started right here. So when I take this last stroke and I go under, and it goes behind that first spoke right there, that's where I want to end that. So I want to end that, cut that right there, then go under again, like that, and end that one there, and then go here, and end the blue. So that's where all three are ended for that side. Then on the other side, this is where I was going over, over, over. This one is my next stroke, and I go over, and I go over this last spoke, over these two, and behind this one, the last spoke, and I end it right past there, like that. Then I take the next one, end it right there, and then finally, the blue, I put the blue back there, and end that. And that's the three spokes right above where these, the over, 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 started. That's where they started, and that's where they end. So as you come around, the first one that hits that marked spoke, the first spoke, when you go over to an in and hit that spoke, that's where you end it, then end the next one, then end the next one. That way you get a perfectly set number of arrows all the way around.